Time to talk a little more college hoops. Our friend Troy Machir joining the program. T-Roy, what's up, dude? How you been?
What's going on, guys? It's a great day to talk hoops. Great week to talk hoops, actually.
Yeah, man. We broke down every matchup in the Crown. We feel like we're really well prepared for that. But man, when you look at the bracket, let's start big picture. I think they got a lot right. What seems right to you?
I think the number one seeds seem right to me. I think the placement of the number two seeds, with maybe one exception, seem right to me. I do generally believe that the SEC was right to get in at least 12 teams. I may take umbrage with two teams, Oklahoma and Texas, but I think they're right on how many teams got in. I think they're right on only giving 4 to the ACC. I kind of expected maybe one more team in there. And I actually thought the two teams over North Carolina were more deserving. But my issues with what they did was with some seedings towards the 5, 6, 7 seeds, some placements in terms of location and just how they laid it out. But when you have 14 teams from one conference, it's really hard to lay it out where you're not having half of the SEC in one region.
You mentioned North Carolina. Why were they put in?
I think, they had a pretty dreadful quad 1 record. It was like 1-8 or something, but they did pick up a ton of wins against quad 2 opponents. They were like 8-3 or something. I don't know. I've heard it, it's like, well, they needed the brand. This was a brand play to get North Carolina tournament. And I'm like, if this were the conference or college football playoff, maybe. But there's 68 teams. It doesn't benefit the tournament at all to have North Carolina in there. I think
you don't think it benefits the first 4 game to have that caliber of a team? Those first 4s aren't watched like the first round is.
Yeah, I don't think so, because we know exactly what they are. They're to whet our palate. It doesn't really matter who's playing in there. I don't think adding North Carolina is going to move the needle all that much. I think some of the other teams like Boise State, the Mountain West kind of fell apart towards the end. I would have loved to see some low majors get a second team in like UC Irvine, but the metrics just don't match up. I wish the committee looked at it more like the college football committee does, which is we want to make the best tournament. And I wish the college football committee did what the college basketball committee does and say, we're going to put in the best teams based off resume. And that would have gotten us, Alabama in over an SMU or something like that. I think there were some better teams in terms of what we want as the viewing public that didn't get in over, a team like North Carolina, who has been aggressively mediocre all season.
I like that, aggressively mediocre.
I mean, it's true. Dude, or is there anybody you kind of are looking to fade going into this? We had Neil Greenberg on from the Post last week, and he said he kind of thinks the bottom half of the SEC might be ripe for some fading. And I remember for a lot of years, the Big Ten would get 8, 10, 11 teams in. And then when they started playing the games, they just were getting rocked. Is there any way that's possible with I'm not talking Auburn and Florida, but like kind of Mizzou and Oklahoma, some of those teams?
Absolutely. I really like who's Missouri playing. There's so many teams I'm blanking on it, but Missouri's playing Drake. And they're playing Drake in the Midwest. Drake is obviously, I believe, in Nebraska. They're playing in Kansas City. Drake was an exceptional team this year, won their conference. That's a 6-11 game. I think Missouri has been good. They've picked up some good wins. I think they're the upper echelon of the middle of the pack of the SEC. I'm absolutely fading Texas A&M against Yale. Yale has done way too much in the tournament. They don't shoot a lot of three-pointers, but they're exceptional at making three-pointers. I do love Buzz Williams, but Yale has won tournament games, like multiple tournament games over the last 5 or 6 years. And they're a very, very good team. I think Texas A&M at a 4 is kind of crazy. I have no desire to see Ole Miss play. They're going to play one of the 11 seeds that's playing in Dayton. And we know an 11 seed that plays in Dayton always wins at least one game. I have no desire to see Ole Miss. The only team from the SEC that's towards the bottom that I actually like is Vanderbilt. They play St. Mary's team that should be seated higher. I don't like that St. Mary's is 7. They should be a 5. But St. Mary's has not played well down the stretch. They've struggled in the last 2 or 3 games. And Vanderbilt plays everyone tight. They play everyone close. They picked off more wins than they shouldn't have had than any other team in the SEC. They've been super impressive. I think that is a team that could easily win their first round game. The problem is they're going to end up playing Alabama, a team that they've faced already. And while, that will give them some identity and give them a better game plan, I don't really want to see an SEC game in the second round. I want to see unique matchups, different matchups. That's one of the issues I have with so many teams getting in. But make no mistake about it, the SEC was the best conference in the country by a large margin and could make the case as one of the best conferences in a single year of all time.
Troy, which are the number ones you think and will probably be the first to go?
Well, potentially Houston, only because they could play Gonzaga in the second round, and I think Gonzaga will match up really well with them. I'm kind of leaning Auburn, only because Auburn's lost 3 of their last 4, and a team that's lost 3 of their last 4 has never won a national championship. Now they'll have to play Louisville or Creighton, and Creighton has the size. Louisville has the tempo. I think it might be Auburn, even though they're the number 1 overall seed. They've been the best team in the country. They have one of the 2 best players in the country, in Janai Broome. But I think it's either Auburn or Houston, just because of what they potentially face in the second round, where I don't have as much faith as Mississippi State or Baylor beating Duke, or UConn or Oklahoma beating Florida.
Man, AU's about to take out Duke. Just watch. I do think it's funny, Troy, and you may not be aware of this. We're talking with our friend Troy Machir here on the Rude Guest Hotline. You can follow Troy at Troy Machir, Machir. Check out his work over at Bet Rivers, all the content stuff. The amount of betting information you have tweeted out in the last 12 hours is just astonishing. But our video producer, his name is White Brian, and he's an Auburn grad and runs auburnwire.com, and he was just shaking his head as you were saying the Tigers might get knocked off.
I think a week ago, I had them penciled into the Final Four, but I love looking at trends because a lot of times that's all we really have to go off of. And they help you kind of shape what you're thinking. They can support or go against it. And listen, we don't get a chalk Final Four. Someone's going to have to lose. And I know people would lean, it's got to be Duke. They potentially have a banged up Cooper Flag, but they played really well in the ACC tournament without him. Granted, the ACC is not as strong as the SEC. I get that. I like Auburn. For some reason, it's like a weird thing where it's I don't really have a lot of evidence to suggest that there's a metric that means that they're going to lose in the second round of the Sweet 16. I just have a bad feeling about it, and I would love to see Bruce Pearl win a national championship. He's one of my favorite coaches in the country, but for some reason, there's just something that makes me believe that having to play Louisville or Creighton, those are tough outs. Then potentially, Michigan team that is playing much, much better. I think really if they can get through their second round game, if they make the Sweet 16, I think their region and their pot of their region is pretty weak. But I have concerns about their second round game.
I think that's fair, and they're playing it in Kentucky, which White Brian also is completely dismissive of. I think what's up with Flag? Is he healthy?
I think rolled big time, man.
Man, can I make a societal point?
Uh-huh.
I think we're overusing the wheelchair.
The wheelchair.
His arms around some coaches.
Yeah. Just walk your ass off.
Chill
the
with
court,
the wheelchair.
Don't need the wheelchair.
Yeah, going back to the Paul Pierce game, I 1,000% agree.
Yeah,
he rolled that thing a little much though, but he didn't need no damn wheelchair.
Yeah, you could just put your arm around the trainer and walk back there on one leg. Anyway, wheelchair aside,
be a man like Kobe was.
Sure,
Kobe walked.
Wheelchair aside, what do you think of the Dukies?
They're good. They have 3 players who can pick up the slack, and Con Knuppel, Kamen Maluk, who's a big center, and Tyrese Proxer. They have some 3-point shooters off the bench. Listen, they're not super deep, and I thought they would struggle in the ACC tournament without Cooper Flag. To the point where I hammered North Carolina to cover. I think it was 10.5, and they ended up covering, but Duke was up 15-16 late in the first, early in the second. I think Cooper Flag will come back and will be at 80%. For game 1. Here's the thing. You don't need him for anything more than an 80%. Yes, I do know that 16s have beaten once, and our local market has been privy to one of those 16 over once. And I do not think that it will matter all that much. So really, he needs to be ready by, Sunday? I think Duke is playing, are they playing on Friday afternoon? So they won't play again until Sunday. So really, that's over a week. I think he'll be healthy. He's really young, very athletic. I don't have a lot of fear that it will hamper them. Now, if he re-injures it, then you're screwed. Yeah. If you do try to, because even though he might be healthy, mentally, you may want to not go 100%. And when you can't fully commit to your knee, your ankle, something that you have to put weight on, you could aggravate it even more because you aren't fully committed to playing through it. So that is, I think, one aspect of the game that could really, hinder their long-term chances if he isn't mentally ready to play on sub 100% ankle and re-aggravating that injury.
That's going to be interesting. Another team that I think is really interesting. We're talking with our friend Troy Machir. Now that we got our brackets, trying to figure them out. St. John's, the job Rick Pitino's done, and dude, it's not a surprise that Rick Pitino has another team top coach. 10. The moral grandstanding and pearl clutching that happened with Pitino is just kind of crazy in a world where everybody now just openly gets paid. But regardless, what do you think of the Johnnies?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit more salaciousness to several Pitino-related issues, which I think is what kind of bubbled it up a little bit more. The Johnnies have been incredibly impressive. And what I find impressive is every single college he has taken to the NCAA tournament has the exact same identity, going back to the teams from the 80s. They press, they play incredibly tough defense. They force turnovers. They pick up the pace on their defensive to offensive transition, and they're not great three-point shooting teams. And I think that is a concern come tournament time. Now, that's not to say that he's never had success in the tournament. He's taken multiple teams to the Final Four. Louisville, he won a national championship, but he had two really good three-point shooters on that team. He has good scorers on this team. I watched Omaha play. They're a pretty good team. They should run through that. What's really interesting is they could potentially play Arkansas in the second round, and Rick Pitino and John Calipari do not like each other, at all. It's up there with the coach from John Chamey and John Calipari. That's how much they do not like each other.
I want to see the game just for that.
Yeah, seriously.
I want that to happen.
Would be great. I think St. John's has the size. I think they have the ball handlers. I think they have the playmakers, and I think they have the coach to make a deep run. Now, can they win a national championship? They're probably in my second tier to win a national championship, but we ultimately know that it all depends on how the bracket breaks, and I do like their matchup. Texas Tech as the 3 seed is a tough out, but like Missouri, we've already discussed, not super confident in them. Florida and Maryland are probably the two teams that pose the biggest threat to them. Maybe Kansas or Arkansas just because of the talent they have, but they're wildly inconsistent. So, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw like St. John's, Maryland in the Elite Eight to make a Final Four. I truly believe that.
Wow. That'd be nuts. Elite Eight might get my ass to San Francisco. We'll see. Let's talk a little bit about the Terp Straw. What do I need to know about Grand Canyon?
They play a lot like Maryland. They play fast. They have a crazy tempo. They like to shoot three-pointers. They're not as good at shooting three-pointers as Maryland, but in their conference tournament championship game against Utah Valley, another really good low major who plays really good half court. They just want to slow it down and play half court. They applied pressure, and even though they are lightly undersized, they have two former power conference players from Kansas and Butler, I believe. And the concern I have with Maryland is their interior defense and really their interior offense as well. Not saying that Julian Reese and Derek Queen can't get it done. We obviously know that. But if you look at the Michigan State game, Michigan State, it seems like they got a hand on the ball every time they went up for a layup or a tough basket in the paint. We obviously saw what Michigan did, not just on the final play going coast to coast, but the entire second half. They were gutting Maryland's interior defense. I think because Maryland only plays 5 guys, maybe 6 guys, when things get stressed down the stretch, they're exhausted, they're tired, and usually you take a play off on defense. And that could really hurt you against a team that plays with a really high tempo in Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon's a team that won a tournament game last year. They've made 4 of the last 5 NCAA tournaments. This is a very good team that certainly doesn't play the quality of competition that Maryland does, but they have all the advanced analytics. And when you watch them play, they do pass the eye test. They look like a more pro-style team than any of the other teams in their conference tournament. Granted, the WAC is a weak tournament, but I do think that Grand Canyon could pose a lot of threats to Maryland. But at the same time, Maryland they don't lose games they shouldn't. They lost to Penn State on the road. I think they lost to Minnesota or someone on the road. They're all by 6 points or less. 4 of their 8 losses have come at the buzzer, which is just brutal. I think, I don't love the line at 10.5, but I do think Maryland does pull this one away because they have superior talent and 3-point shooting, which you need in the NCAA tournament.
Troy, every year we have 5 and 12, and the 12 beats the 5. Which one of these you think is the best chance that the 12 beats the 5?
I think it's probably – I love all of the 12-5s. I love UC San Diego. I've been out on Michigan, even though Michigan just won 3 games to win the Big East tournament, or Big Ten tournament. They have to go out west to play UC San Diego, who's the best team in the country for covering the spread. But I think it's probably Colorado State against Memphis. Memphis squeaked by UAB in their championship game. The score was a little bit bigger than the game made it seem. Colorado State has won 9 in a row. They ran roughshod through the Mountain West tournament, which is just a brutal conference tournament. Their head coach is going to be at Minnesota or will be at another power conference school next year. Colorado State's the only lower seed that's favored to beat their higher seed. Memphis, was knocked out last year in the first round. Yeah, 2.5.
Wow.
Yeah. I think it could be Colorado State. Now, I don't think this is their best roster. I think their best roster was 2 years ago when they had David Roddy, who was drafted. But Colorado State has been playing so well. And Memphis, even though they have an All-American and P.J. Haggerty, who's really, really good, I think Colorado State, they love to rebound on the offensive glass. They're really good at forcing turnovers. And those are 2 things you need extra possessions, and you need to turn 2s into 3s and get to the foul line when the clock stops. Just maximizing possessions is how you win in March Madness, and Colorado State does that really well.
B, how do you think Sands is going to handle it if it's Colorado State, his alma mater, versus Maryland in the second round?
He'll lose his mind.
I think he might, dude.
Yeah. He might combust.
Yo, is there any – now, this is impossible, right? But I do remember – I feel like I remember you at least not necessarily calling the upset, but saying you liked UMBC's chances or something like that. Do I remember that correctly?
You do. And at least I'm a multi-bracket guy. I know a lot of people don't like that. At least in one of my brackets, I had UMBC beating Virginia. And it came down to – style of play in the NCAA tournament. Virginia just slow, the slowest. They don't score a lot, and things can happen where if you get down, how are you going to score points? And sure. UMBC had a guy who was shooting 3-pointers after 3-pointers, and the real thing that put me over the edge was DeAndre Hunter got injured in the last game of the conference tournament, and he was ruled out for the first round game with a wrist injury. He was their only scoring option. Now, Virginia was kind of a mirage where there are not very many teams like that score 40 points a game and beat everyone. So I don't know if there's anything like that this year. I still maintain that I don't think any 16 seeds should play in Dayton. Give the low majors their shot. They shouldn't have to play another.
It's interesting you say that because we had Dwayne Simpkins on the show this morning, and his point about playing in Dayton is they get the national spotlight. He thinks it's actually good for the AU brand.
Yeah,
and maybe he's just finding a silver lining. I don't know, but
no, that's totally right. I agree, but at the same token, and you do get an extra game under your belt. Now you have to get back on the bus and the plane and travel someplace else, usually in the locale closer to the team you're playing. But if you win your conference tournament, you shouldn't have to then play in to get in the tournament. I think the last 8 at-large teams should be playing to get in. They didn't do enough in their conference tournament. And also, this tournament is ultimately about the little guy. Don't make it harder for the little guy to have a crack at it.
Yeah, I hear you theoretically for sure.
Yes.
So let's do this. And what's your biggest upset? And then who's your Final Four?
So I think a wacky upset is going to happen that no one is predicting. Not like Robert Morris over Alabama. I do think Bryant could make things really difficult for Michigan State. I know it's the January, February Izzo. Michigan State does have a big, ugly loss to Middle Tennessee from a couple years ago. Bryant was very impressive in their conference tournament. They've been impressive all year. I wouldn't be surprised if we do have 15 seed beat a 2 seed. I also think Tennessee is ripe for the picking because they're very slow on offense. Wofford likes to shoot 3-pointers.
Loves Wofford.
That is I think there's a big upset to be had that not enough people are talking about. Potentially Lipscomb at 14 over number 3 Iowa State. Iowa State's best player won't be playing in the tournament because of injury. It's not going to be one of those sexy 5-12 matchups that everyone talks about. There's always a head scratcher, like when St. Peter's beat Kentucky or when Oakland beat Kentucky.
Right. All right. Now, what's your Final Four, dude?
Oh, geez. Gosh. Excuse me. I have Duke in there. I have Clemson in there. Give me St. John's and give me Auburn, even though I said I don't think Auburn's going to make it. This is all to say that the bracket came out like 18 hours ago, and I have not even taken one look at the potential for a Final Four, solely focusing on the first weekend. But I think because the conference tournaments produced a lot of 1 and 2 seeds winning, the matchups that we see in the first round are going to be so tight. So I think this year, more than any other, we could have a lot of upsets that are not true upsets because these teams are good enough. This isn't the 7th seed from the Southland Conference. From the Southland, from the Horizon, from the Summit, from the Big West, all of those 1 seeds won. So we're getting really the best mid-majors and low majors in the country, which should lead to some of the best first-round action in the tournament.
Hey, wait for it.
All right. Thanks, dude. Appreciate your time.
All right, Troy. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, guys.
All right. That's Troy Machir, Bet Rivers. Give him a follow at Troy Machir, Machir. The madness is coming, and I cannot wait. Neither can you.